Hi, I'm Scott Douglas, and welcome to Monster Truck Classics. Here on Monster Truck Classics, we look at races from the early days of monster truck racing, enjoying some of the great action that got the sport started. Incredible action that has blazed the trail and led us to where we are today with the mega events that are so popular in the world of monster truck racing and monster truck freestyle. Now this time on Monster Truck Classics, we're going back to Kalamazoo, Michigan, which was almost legendary as one of the fastest, longest, and toughest tracks on the circuit. An all-star lineup is on hand in Kalamazoo, getting ready to see who is going to not only be the winner, but who's going to survive on a course that always jumped up and bit its share of monster trucks in the early days. Get ready for some awesome racing action and some incredible highlight moments here on Monster Truck Classics. And we're also going to bring in a few of the personalities that we saw actually at the event in the early 90s. We'll see what they're up to today, and we'll go back and relive the moments in Kalamazoo. So without further ado, it's time to go monster truck racing, Kalamazoo, Michigan, here on Monster Truck Classics.
TNT Monster Truck Challenge.
Hi everyone, welcome to Power Tracks. We're at the Kalamazoo County Fair in Army Armstrong. I'm glad to see you off the midway and off all the rides. We're ready to rock and roll with monster trucks, and we're getting close to the end of the season. That means kind of do or die time.
Boy, Richard, do or die, I don't know if that's good enough expression. It's a war out there. The reason being, these guys have been chasing these national points. We do have a points leader, the Carolina Crusher, but right behind him, the Equalizer. This rookie driver's coming after him, but you cannot forget USA 1. All the other trucks are running so close. What these drivers are doing at this point in time, they're pulling the gloves off and they're going street fight. It is down to the war.
Now, two trucks he didn't name that you got to keep your eye on. That's King Crunch and Gravedigger.
Yeah, King Crunch took the big win in Nashville, Tennessee. He took 2 wins down there 2 weeks in a row, so he's a player for the national championship. The Gravedigger, Dennis, we're going to see one good run out of him for sure. That's a qualifying shot, but that one run usually is worth the price of admission.
And we never know what to expect out of Dennis Anderson. Let's talk about this track. It is long, it is fast, and Army, to me, it looks dangerous.
I don't know about dangerous. What's going to happen is it's a steep ramp track. Some of the drivers are walking back saying the only way we're going to get any higher is that they put rocket boosters on us, because when we say a steep ramp track, it makes the trucks launch higher into the air. Now, you can't go forward when you're flying through the air. The drivers got to figure out how to stay close to the cars to get the ground speed for the second jump, because at the end of the night, I look for somebody to jump all the cars at the finish line. That's the caliber of competition we're going to see here today.
First round action straight ahead on Power Tracks.
What a great start we're off to in Kalamazoo, Michigan on Monster Truck Classics, and more of that action is coming up. But now I want to take a moment to visit with one of the broadcast team on that broadcast from Kalamazoo, Michigan, Richard Leak, with us and kind of updating things. And Richard, welcome to Monster Truck Classics. What was it like back in those days at Kalamazoo?
Well, Scott, primarily it was fun. It was fun for the drivers. It was fun for the crowds. You're going to see tremendous crowds. Wherever these monster trucks went back then, crowds was the name of the game, and putting on a show was the name of the game. But we also had a lot of things going on back then that you maybe don't see a lot today, and that's intense rivalries. These guys sometimes just didn't like each other, especially the KG veterans going up against some of these kind of cocky rookies.
We'll see that theme kind of play itself out, especially when some of the guys that you interviewed back in those days and were working with here in Kalamazoo, the Breen boys, some of the, even then were called old school guys, yet there was this upstart group, names like Anderson and Litzow and Porter, who were kind of the new guys in the sport, who were the guys moving it forward. And it was interesting to watch those heads battle.
Well, you know, it was even the rookies, guys like one-run Dennis Anderson, as we used to call him back then with Gravedigger, taking on the defending national champion. I called him Rowdy Rod Litzow, and you'll find out in Kalamazoo today why they had this thing going head-to-head all the time.
Now, Dennis Anderson, you weren't his favorite announcer there for a while with that one-run Anderson, but you were right, and we've already seen that here, we're going to develop it as this show in Kalamazoo goes on, or you and Army will develop it, the fact that he was already struggling, but this was one night he actually got the equipment back together. He's not done yet.
The thing about Dennis, one-run Anderson, as we always known him back then, is he always put on a show. Whether it was qualifying or whether it was a heat race, that guy was there to win, and that guy was there to put on a show. Sometimes he broke, but the good news is other guys broke too, and Dennis always came back.
You mentioned the crowds, and when we look at these highlights from Kalamazoo, wow, every seat was packed. That had to be a neat atmosphere to be a part of.
Well, you had standing room only and a lot of kids. There were so many kids that just fell in love, and I think that's why you see the evolution of monster trucks today. These little kids back then are bigger kids now, and they're bringing their own kids in.
Now, a little bit later on the program, we have some more special guests, including your cohort there, Army Armstrong, and you and he worked together on a lot of the television for a while. And, you know, Army, when you were going around the Army, that was kind of like going around the rock star. He had his own pack of followers back then.
Army had his own groupies. No matter where he was, Army had his groupies. And, you know, Army developed arthritis from all the autographs he used to sign and his personal phone number he used to give out.
Army will get equal time a little bit later in the program. Now, coming up, what are some of the spectacular moments? And we're going to see some of them, but, you know, when you looked at it, it was just the fact that these things were starting to get so fast and starting so much, I don't want to use the word danger, but it certainly was getting on the edge of risk. The bar kept getting raised and raised more and more. And we see it here in Kalamazoo, some spectacular moments coming up.
Well, a couple of things that come to mind from Kalamazoo. Number one, you're going to see why we nicknamed the driver Flipper. And number two, you're going to see a driver take the second jump and never touch a car. First time that had ever happened at Kalamazoo.
There was some awesome action at Kalamazoo. Hey, you're going to see it on Monster Truck Classics. Let's get back to Kalamazoo for more racing, Monster Truck Classic style.
We've got a standing room only crowd and a beautiful night and getting ready to rock and roll, Army.
Well, Richard, you know, the Kalamazoo County Fair Board told us the only time that the fair sells out are when the monster trucks roll into town, and the best in the sport are here this evening.
And there's the best of the beast so far. It is Rowdy Rod Litzow, USA 1. He's the best of the beast because he's the defending Renegades national champion. He was our top qualifier tonight at 8.29 seconds. He's about to make his bye run. Then it's going to be John Breen and Mad Dog taking on Gary Wiggins, Mopar Magic, the Jersey Outlaw Ford of Madman Mike Wine against Jesse Berge and the Auto Value playing for keeps. Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger taking on the Ford of John Moore, and no problem, we'll have the equalizer, the rookie, dangerous David Morris going up against Bennett Clark and the Clydesdale. King Crunch with Scott Stevens, one of the innovators in this sport, taking on Bob Breen and Wild Hair. Starvin, Marvin Smith, the Stomper, takes on John Kwasniewski and the Buffalo Trimmer. Carolina Crusher, Gary Porter, number one in the current national point standings against Dave Wysurek and Nightlife. And the USA 1 has completed his bye run. Now it's time for side-by-side racing. Up first to the line, Gary Wiggins, the Mopar Magic Dodge. He is out of Williamstown, North Carolina, and he's taking on the KG veteran, John Breen, Chevrolet Mad Dog out of Missouri.
John Breen's been around the sport for about 14 years, definitely a veteran. Gary sits on the other side, driving a Dodge-powered vehicle. Now, he's the only Dodge truck that came out and wanted to run against these Ford and Chevrolets. And a lot of Dodge fans out there, you believe in a Chrysler product, you got to pull for the Mopar Magic. He's up here battling with the big boys. Breen jumps on him on his start line with a Mad Dog. Let's see if the Dodge can pull back. He's trying to. No, Breen's going to go to the next round, Richard.
John Breen easily knocking off the Mopar Magic of Gary Wiggins. The crowd appreciating the run and the effort. And so John Breen now, in the next round of action, will be facing USA 1 and Rowdy Rod Litzow.
John, since we've seen you last, you have taken a win. You're going to go up against USA 1 in the next round. What are you going to do?
Oh, he's just another rookie, just in the way, so I'm going to knock him out.
Feel that confident with the Mad Dog?
Yeah, we got a new motor in it. I had one of them rookies bad-mouth me, so I'm out to knock them all out.
No, pretty confident words. There's Rod Litzow as he will be taking on John Breen in the next round, and Army, no love lost there.
No, what's happening, Richard, is these guys have been battling all year long. We're getting near the end of the year, and, hey, the grins are gone. they got war paint on right now.
Going for all the blood. As we get ready for our next race, it's going to be the Ford Jersey Outlaw, the Madman, Mike Wine. He's out of New Jersey taking on the hometown boy, Jesse Berge, and the Auto Value Store playing for keeps, Chevrolet.
We're glad to have Jesse on the tour with us with the Chevrolet Auto Value sponsorship. In front of his own hometown, comes out a little bit of a bad bounce. It's going to really hurt. The kid from New Jersey goes to the next round for the Ford camp. Hometown boy is going to go on the trailer, Richard.
So it's going to be 27-year-old Mike Wine and the Jersey Outlaw Ford moving on into the quarterfinals.
A real tough track, taking some real strange bounces out there. You're going to advance, but there's a real strong possibility the Gravedigger is going to be setting that other lane. What goes through your mind?
Well, right now, I'm very proud. The truck's been running fantastic. For the last 2 weeks, we've had nothing but problems. I've not even been able to go past the first round, so right now I'm just ecstatic to be able to go against the Digger, and I'm all out for him. He better run his best when he goes against me.
Well, the Gravedigger is scheduled to race next. However, Army in qualifying, the Gravedigger suffered some mechanical problems. They're still working on the machine. I understand they think they might be able to get it repaired and come back for their race in just a little while. Here's some videotape replay of Digger's qualifying earlier.
What happened when he went over the last set of jumps, if you watch the vehicle, you should be able to see some sparks as the front drive shaft let go on the truck. Now, we told you in the opening of the show that he is notorious for one run. It looks like he might be able to get back and actually get in competition this evening, Richard. I really hope so. These people would really love to see this truck. It's got to be one of the most popular trucks on the tour.
Well, of course, a lot of the guys on the circuit call Dennis now One Run Anderson.
It's a rolling vocational school is what it is.
Well, here's a couple of hot shots on the circuit. David Morris, you couldn't get any hotter. He's currently number 2 in the national point standings. He's a rookie driver from Tennessee. It is the Equalizer Chevrolet, and he's taking on Bad News Bennett Clark, the Powder Springs, Georgia native, in the Clydesdale Chevy.
What we can watch for on this one is a quick lead by the Equalizer. That's where we are right now. He leaves so quick, and now Clark has to try to pull him back on the other end. Is he going to be able to do it?
Good race.
No, Clark was there. He's pulling him back, but the Equalizer jumped out enough on the starting line to hold on for the win.
It was a good race, though, by both drivers, but the Equalizer moves on into the quarterfinals.
Some great action already in Kalamazoo, and we've got a lot more of that to come here on Monster Truck Classics. But before we go back trackside, wanted to take a couple of moments to relive some of those days with Richard Leake, who was part of the broadcast team bringing the Kalamazoo event to Monster Truck fans everywhere. Welcome to Monster Truck Classics, and when you look back, what are some of the thoughts you have about not necessarily what we're seeing on the air right now, but how you felt behind the scenes being a part of the early days of Monster Truck racing?
You know, I think you could signify it with the phrase new and exciting. It was new to the fans, it was new to the drivers, it was new for technology, but by golly, it was exciting for everybody involved.
We look at Kalamazoo, and you mentioned it on the broadcast, every seat was full. You were getting a lot of that, and we have for years, but it was certainly exciting in those days to see those crowds come out at a place like Kalamazoo.
Well, you know, it wasn't unusual, Scott, back then to see standing room crowds no matter where the monsters rolled into town. They already developed their favorites, and they came to see not only their favorite monster, but their favorite driver. It was already developing back then.
You mentioned favorites, and of course Dennis Anderson over the years has now become the most popular driver in the most popular truck. In that day, now obviously Dennis was just a few years out of the box, if you will. Was the popularity gaining ground then? I mean, I know he had some trouble keeping the equipment going. You gave him a nickname he wasn't too fond of, but he obviously was already building popularity as well.
Yeah, Dennis, I kind of nicknamed, and it cost me, but we called Dennis One Run Dennis Anderson. Now, that wasn't Dennis's fault. He was there with a terrific truck, Gravedigger. How much better can you get than the Gravedigger? But Dennis had a habit. His habit was all out, 150% all the time. And sometimes his equipment broke, sometimes he rolled it over, but Dennis was there for the show.
Well, and we see that some of the things that helped make that Anderson legend grow, you were mentioning the One Run nickname, but we'll see more of him here. Yes, they were broke, but his crew and he was under there with them, and they would get him fixed, as we'll see throughout this hour. So it was building the legend, if you will.
The legend was building for Gravedigger, but you have to remember, back then also, there was a lot of rivalries, personal rivalries, because we had some cagey veterans. They'd been around a long time tinkering with monster trucks. And they were going up against these hot shots, such as One Run Dennis Anderson and Rod Litzow and Steve Dane. So it was kind of a rookie veteran rivalry off the track as well as on the track.
And when you look at a lot of that, you know, you start thinking about the fact that we're looking at these new names, and some of them were veterans, but a lot of them were new names. But when we have fans watching Monster Truck Classics who maybe are kind of new to the sport, yeah, they know Dennis Anderson, maybe still know Gary Porter and some of those names, but you're looking back to folks who've been with it for a while, they're going to smile and say, hey, I hadn't thought about John Kwasniewski for a while, and yet the newer fans are able to see that the Buffalo Tremor was a heck of a monster truck.
There was a lot of great monster trucks back there, and you know, you had the Dane boys that were in, you had the Breen boys. Now, these are names that may not be familiar to a lot of people now, but these guys were out there. They were putting mileage on their vehicles, going from show to show to show, and they were really building what monster trucks became today.
It was a lot of fun. It was certainly, I guess, when you think about it, when the mega events that we see today in the monster truck world, none of this would have happened without those things that you were a part of in places like Kalamazoo, Michigan, and being willing to, again, take the risks those drivers were on challenging a course that tough, that many cars, that long, that fast. And it certainly jumped up and bit a few of them that night.
It did. You have people that not only have trouble with their equipment, but you're going to see some just wonderful side-by-side racing to where you think the guy is done for the night, and here he comes. And you know what comes to mind is Dennis Anderson. One run does it again.
We're going to find out how Dennis does and all the action that Richard's talking about, because right now we're headed back trackside to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and more on Monster Truck Classics.
We are midway through the first round of action, and our next competitors coming to the line will be Bob Breen, the Wild Hair Chevrolet. He hails out of Missouri, Barnett, Missouri. His brother John, the driver of Mad Dog, they're kind of a team on the circuit. And he's taking on Scott Stevens at King Crunch Chevrolet. Scott's out of the Badlands of Woodlands, Texas.
Scott Stevens has to be one of the premier drivers on the tour, and you're not going to see him in our top 10 points. The reason being, he didn't get the truck finished till about halfway through the year. He's coming out. He's actually gearing for 1990. He's using this for a test and tune session, and he is testing and tuning with the best of them. Richard, he made that look easy.
So the former motorcycle racer, Scott Stevens, has just waltzed his way to another win, this one in the King Crunch, and he'll move on into the quarterfinals, where he will face a very, very tough David Morris in the equalizer in the next round. Let's go trackside, Army's got the winner.
Scott, before the night's over, do you feel like somebody's going to jump all the cars at the finish line into the track? Are they going to get that quick?
Yeah, I think, if I can just get a good straight line at them, I can do it. I know USA 1 can, Digger's coming back, equalizer. There's 4 or 5 trucks here tonight that can do it.
The truck you got to worry about right now is this kid out of Tennessee with the equalizer.
Yeah, I got to cut a good light and, not let him get away from me. We can beat him.
Next up, as the Ferris wheel goes in the background. By the way, Army, that's where I'm going to be later tonight.
He brought out an interesting point. Gravedigger's still in this thing.
That's right. One run Anderson gets maybe 2 tonight.
All right, let's see what happened to Chevrolet people. They're going to have something to cheer about. The Stomper truck. Now, who's he going to be going against, Rich?
Well, that's Marvin Smith in Stomper Chevrolet, and he's up against John Kwasniewski, the Buffalo Trimmer. And Army, this is a guy that has really started coming on strong. I would look for a great run from Kwasniewski.
Well, I call him Johnny K. I can't pronounce the young man's last name. So Johnny K out of New York is making a name for himself. He's one of the 3 rookie drivers we have on the tour, Mike Wine, David Morris, and this kid. And they're all players. Whoa. Look at this. He's not afraid of the Stomper Chevrolet. Good run. They're not getting as much air as I thought they would, Richard. These guys have figured this track out in a hurry.
Earlier tonight we were talking about how steep the ramps were, and we were afraid it might cause problems. That has not been the case, as Johnny K, as you call him, John Kwasniewski, gets the win and moves on. This is Gary Porter, Carolina Crusher. He's currently #1 in the national point standing. Chevrolet out of Wadesboro, North Carolina, but he's up against probably the most consistent driver in America. I call him Super Dave Wysorek. It is a Nightlife Chevy out of Grand Island, Nebraska.
I think Dave Wysorek is one of the best monster truck drivers in the sport. He's a privateer, runs out of his own pocketbook. Can't really lean on a whole lot of equipment, but believe me, he could be the Carolina Crusher's worst nightmare. You can't take this guy for granted. If you do, bam, he'll get you. Let's see what's going to happen. Crusher comes out first. Wysorek's going to have to play catch-up, but he always comes on strong at the end. Richard, look at this. He did it. An upset. The national points leader goes on the trailer.
So Super Dave Wysorek has done it. He's got the upset. He moves now into the quarterfinals as Nightlife has knocked off the #1 truck in America, Carolina Crusher, at the finish line.
Dave Wysorek just walked up in the interview area laughing. What are you laughing about here? A lot of people are just kind of quiet. They saw an upset.
A lot of guys are having a hard time beating Gary. He's been taking all the points, and I finally got my chance of beating him, and I'm glad I beat him.
It does feel good?
It does.
See you in that next round.
All right.
Gary, you're on top. Everybody's coming after you. You know they're going to throw everything they have at you when you go to that line.
When I come off the first set of cars that time, I don't know why my truck cut off for some reason. It just died. I don't know if it was fuel, electrical, or what it was, and it cost me the race.
It was definitely a clean cut. I could hear it on this end, and also it bounced into the left, and over to the left side of the track, there's a mud bog pit from an event that was held here earlier. Did that upset you at all, or just the engine going away hurt?
No, the bounce didn't bother me at all. It was just when my motor cut off. You know, I was just helpless, sort of, way to speak, and it cost me the race.
Now, I'll tell you what I think cost him the race. It was something by the name of a Dave Wysorek.
I told you Wysorek, in my opinion, is one of the best drivers in this sport. You get him a sponsor, that kid will play big league ball with you.
Well, the red lights are on. That means he's ready to rock and roll. We're talking about Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger against the Ford, and a tough Ford it is. John Moore, no problem, and you can see the drive shaft has been fixed on the Gravedigger.
He broke a drive shaft the first round. What we're going to watch here is a kamikaze on 4 wheels. Call the Gravedigger. What's going to happen? Moore's trying to pull him back in. Anderson comes out. Cleared all the car. Richard, we wondered about it. He's the first one to clear the final jump. 12 cars, and he went over them all.
A good race by John Moore, but not good enough, and the Gravedigger moves on.
Monster truck action on Monster Truck Classics from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Still 8 trucks with a chance of coming out as the winner here, but we're really going to start paring it down when we get to the quarterfinal round in just a moment. Before we do that, though, I want to take another moment to welcome another special guest and a chance to look back at what it was like in those days at Kalamazoo. Of course, one of the legends of broadcasting in the motorsports world, Army Armstrong, with us. And first, Army, I got to pick on you, though, at the start. Johnny K, I don't know that you ever said the name Kwasniewski.
Couldn't pronounce it. I'm from Kentucky, and it's either going to be Johnny K or Johnny Alphabet, so we stayed with the Johnny K. But I tell you what, the kid kept the name, he used it, he had T-shirts made, people formed a fan club for him and everything, and he's one of these young up-and-comers that Richard was talking about that's ready to go after these guys. And any given night, old Johnny K out of New York could dance with the best of them.
Well, you mentioned Richard and the Johnny K thing there with you, but Richard also was one big on nicknames, Rowdy Rod Litzow, and some of the ones he came up with, whether the guys liked him or not.
You still don't mention one run to Dennis Anderson without him coming after you. I'll tell you that right now. If Dennis comes in the show later, do not mention that. Yeah, but the nicknames come with the personalities, and the guys kind of liked them, and the fans really liked them, and everybody kind of identified with what was going on. But you know, the sport was so unique at that time, like Richard was saying, everybody was happy. It was a family-oriented sport. People were making names for themselves. It was just a real exciting time to be involved in motorsport.
The monster truck world today, it's still a lot of fun. It's still exciting. But there have been so many changes. Some of these mega events are so sophisticated. In some ways, there's so much more money in certain areas on the table. Was it kind of maybe a little more innocent time back then in a way?
You know, it really was, because the fact that they were outdoors running on 2 jumps and the longer tracks, these guys were really excited about it. But new dimensions developed. There's a thing called no man's land. You know what no man's land is? It's the area between the cars, and you hear the driver say, we're going to roll the first jump, throttle up in no man's land, and shoot it out the back door on the other end. A whole new terminology in motorsports developed from this, and it stays around today. Today, like you say, you go inside in the courses and the big arenas. There's a lot to it, a lot of driving involved in it now with the rear steer and everything. But back then, it was lock and load and straight to the other end. Speaking of lock and load, I used to tell Dennis Anderson all the time, you know, you got to go after these guys with the Gravedigger. You got to go. You got to put another notch in your belt. I always related it to a gunfight. 2 guys walked out there, but only one of them came back. Were you going to be the one that came back tonight? That was the big question, and each week we found out.
Army, one of these things that maybe some people wouldn't realize in today's day, because it's a different game in a way, in terms of the way certain things are done and the rules, if you will, even in broadcasting and things like that. But back in this day, and when we're seeing things in Kalamazoo, this was all so new, and so many of these drivers were brand new, and you had been around a lot of different motorsports for a while. They kind of came to you as one of the experts rather than just a broadcaster. What was that like?
My history was in the sport of drag racing, but a lot of the same terminology and the physics apply in this sport. The only difference is in drag racing you're running a 1,400-pound car, and in this venue you're running a 10,000-pound truck. So suspension, absorbent energy, and so on and so forth like that was so very, very important. And if you look at the history of the sport, that's exactly the way they went. All the technology developed into, okay, we're running big tires, but we're running low air pressure. That'll absorb some of the energy. We're running the Custer shock absorbers. We're going to get the off-road guys out in Baja, California. We're going to run their shocks on our truck. We're going to get 30 inches of travel. You know, it's really interesting to me that the day and time has come when they're actually doing development on the driver's seat, because they've taken as much of the energy and compressed it as they can. Now the only thing they can give is the bottom of the driver's seat. And these guys today are still coming up with ways to absorb that energy. So yeah, they would look and listen, because they knew that I had the opportunity to look and listen to all the drivers and to see what was going on, and I would try to pass that information around. And it all came back to one thing, and that was safety.
And it wasn't, and of course the whole thing has become so much safer as we've gotten on, and the technology has advanced, and a lot of that has been the safety for the drivers. With that said, and the thought and what we're seeing today, one of the innovative trucks at the time certainly was USA 1. Everett Jasmer developed it. Rod Litzow, a tremendous driver. Steve Wilkie at the time was one of the best crew chiefs in the business. They had the whole team concept together. The reason I bring that up when we're talking about Monster Truck Classics is to fans who are newer to the sport really don't know the name USA 1. A lot of it was the fact that USA 1 had a vision of just going as fast as they could, and that's what they were concerned about. And when the sport evolved into more turning courses and things like that, it wasn't their cup of tea. That's part of it, wasn't it?
You're exactly right. Everett Jasmer started that name and put together a dynamo team and was one of the top teams in the country. But Everett went so far in the evolution of the sport, but he didn't want to go further, and he stopped at the fact that he wanted to run stock frames. He said if these are going to be trucks and look like a Chevrolet truck, and these run a Chevrolet frame, same for Ford, Chrysler, so on and so forth. So when they started going to the full tube chassis and cantilever suspension and everything, Everett kind of said, look, I'm not going to play, I'm not putting my cards on the table anymore. And I think that the sport lost one of the finest teams out there. You know, USA 1, boy, carried the colors red, white, and blue, awfully proud. And it was like you said, with the driver, crew chief, and owner combination, they were on the cutting edge, but they just took it so far, and then they stopped. It was kind of interesting it happened that way.
One of the guys who did develop the cutting edge and go with it as time went on would be some of the, I shouldn't say one, just several of the guys who were going with it are guys that we're going to see continue on here today, including Scott Stevens, of course Dennis Anderson, but also the Gary Porters, and some of these folks and David Morris with the Equalizer team, and Gary Cook. Those were the guys that figured out, okay, well, we can get lighter, we can do these other suspension things, we can make them turn, we can really do a lot of phenomenal things with these trucks.
Every time one of those drivers you just mentioned got out of a truck, they would be thinking about what they could do to make that truck quicker for the next time around, whether it was losing weight. You know, they say the quickest way to make horsepower is to lose weight. Well, these guys went down, but you have to realize you're dealing with a 10,000-pound truck. You can't just throw weight out, because when that truck rolls, you got 10,000 pounds of weight that's got to be absorbed energy-wise somewhere. So you can't just take and throw things out of the truck. You can only take things off the truck and replace them with lighter components that are just as strong. So a lot of the technology, I mentioned the Custer shocks a minute ago. A lot of this stuff happened, and you start taking 10 pounds off here and 10 pounds off there. The wheels, for a perfect example, you could take the cleats on a tire and take that cleat, the cleat being the bar part that actually digs into the surface, and you could cut that cleat and take 200 pounds off of each tire. Well, you do that on 4 corners, you've lost 800 pounds of weight. That's making horsepower right there. That was just one of the little tricks. Everybody had their own ideas to what worked, and it got to the point where everybody played with their cards close to their chest. They weren't helping anymore. About 1990 is when they said, hey, if we're going to do this for real, I've got secrets I'm not going to tell anybody else about. And that's where we were at this point in time.
It was certainly a happening in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and the quarterfinals are coming up right now on Monster Truck Classics.
Moving into the quarterfinals, and Army, our first race will have the matchup John Breen wanted. Remember, John said he wanted to get his hands on USA 1. He's got him at the starting line. It is Rod Litzow. The guys are calling him Flipper now on the circuit, taking on John Breen and Mad Dog.
Getting your hands on Litzow in the USA 1 truck's about like running into a dark room and grabbing hold of a bear. What do? Let go of it or hang on to it? We're going to find out right now. And I got a feeling Breen is going to wish he'd let go of this rascal, because Litzow, oh, good lead by Breen on the start line. Litzow's going to have to come back. Horsepower's in favor. Look at this. USA 1 flexing its muscle. Second truck in a row to clear them all. Richard, you talked about it at the beginning.
Rowdy Rod Litzow with a resounding win over the Mad Dog. That advances USA 1 into the semifinals.
You guys are dedicated to winning this thing for the second year in a row, but luck seems to be on the other side of the fence from you. How are you going to overcome that?
Well, we ain't going to play with luck anymore. We played with that, long enough. Now I'm just playing with my old game like I did last year. I'm coming out here strong, and I'm out here to win.
Well, that is confident speaking, but he has a right to be confident. He is the defending national champion. The guys call him Flipper because he's the only monster truck driver I know that has flipped his truck over, 5 times now in less than 12 months. Our next matchup is the Gravedigger, Dennis Anderson, going up against the Ford of Mike Wine,
keep your eye on the Jersey Outlaw. He has been running super lately.
Historically, Dennis Anderson will tell you when everything is go, when it's on 100% kill, the Gravedigger will have both of those awesome red lights on. They're both on. He is coming like a rocket right down the right side of the track. Anderson is there.
There could be some problem, though, Army. It didn't look like Gravedigger's front two tires went up over the junk cars.
Okay, the track crew's checking it out. We'll stay tuned and find out. The rule is you got to hit what you're jumping with both front tires. They go back and video replay. What's the call on it, Richard?
They are still waiting. I'm waiting for word myself topside. This is a replay of that race. In question is his move coming up right here. Did both tires go over the front end of the junk cars there? And here comes the official word. It was a good legal run, so the Gravedigger moves to the semifinals.
Dennis, how bad do you want USA 1 right let south?
I want him real bad. That's what I'm trying to do is pick these lanes out here. I've tried the left lane and the right lane. I'd really like to jump back in that left lane and try it again, but if we get up there, I want to nail him to the wall hard.
You got a handful of him. Good luck to you.
You ain't kidding. He's got his mess together, but if I can keep mine together, it's going to be a war.
Now we'll look forward to that semifinal matchup, USA 1 against Gravedigger. Now who else is going to be in the semifinals? It'll either be Scott Stevens and King Crunch or David Morris and the Equalizer, rookie against veteran.
Rookie will be driving in the red truck, the veteran, the high-tech truck, runs the onboard computer. Stevens comes out with the Texas truck. He's making it tough on Morris. Morris got to come back.
Whoa!
I believe Morris nipped him. Oh, we got some shutdown problems. They were running it out the back door, Richard.
I could not tell from topside who their winner was. You saw David Morris shut it down violently up against the guardrail. Looks like he may have a right or a left front tire gone down on him from hitting that guardrail. That is the TNT officials looking at the finish line tape, and there it is. David Morris and the Equalizer gets the win by 3/100ths of a second.
Well, Scott, the word is the Equalizer did get you by 3/100ths of a second.
Yeah, that's not bad. This is only the 7th time the truck's been down the track. Every week it's getting faster. A couple of weeks we were winning. Tonight we were off just a little bit. Maybe I should have been driving a little bit harder. There's tomorrow night. We've got a lot more races to go, and I still think we're going to be maybe a truck that's going to mess up a lot of guys in the final round before it's over with.
Dave Morris, 3/100ths of a second. Not very much, but enough in this game of thousandths of seconds.
Yeah, that was a real close race. I wasn't sure who won it. I knew when we hit the cars, we were just dead heat up. And I was just praying that I had a little edge on him. I had her to the floor when we went for the second set of cars. That's what I was hoping to pass him in the air.
What about the shutdown? You definitely had your hands full trying to get that truck under control and get it stopped before you got into the guardrail down here on the finish line end.
Yeah, yes, I did. I didn't know what kind of shape I was going to be in when I landed. I knew I was going for the hole in the guardrail, and I was afraid to get on the brakes, and I was afraid to try to turn it, so I just thought I'd kind of slow it down gradually, so that's what I did.
So David Morris is in the semifinals, and he will face the winner of this race, either Dave Wysork and Nightlife or Johnny K, John Kwasniewski, and Buffalo Trimmer in the semis.
Two different theories of racing. Johnny K's going to try to go out and hold off Wysork. Wysork, strong card as a finish line into the track. Look at this. Wysork comes back again. Well, he has got this track figured. He'll give you the first half, but the finish line's at the end of the second.
So the semifinals are set.
So this hot and heavy, furious action in Kalamazoo, Michigan is down to the Final Four. We're going to look at the semifinals in a moment, but after that very controversial quarterfinal round, what a more perfect time to bring in the icon of the sport, the legendary Dennis Anderson, driver of the Gravedigger, and even Richard Leake was on you a little bit earlier with the one-run nickname, but you were certainly showing that night. Well, you may bust it, but you guys were going to come back. Still, you come back, get it running, and you almost DQ'd yourself out of this round.
Yeah, that's right. We had that 2-and-2 rule. Mm-hmm. You had to hit the cars with both front wheels, and so they had to back up and review the tape. And Mike Wine was always a big snibbler about that. It's like, oh, they're cheating for Gravedigger. You got to watch him. No problem. USA won, all the guys. And it was like, God, you guys lighten up a little bit. It's like, kind of like Richard says, I was one-run Anderson back then. So when I did finally make some good runs, don't try to beat me out because I missed a car by 2 inches, you know.
And you didn't on this one,
right.
but it was close.
I know it. It was a good call.
Well, while we're sitting there, you were a part of some of the development of some of these rules. What was the reasoning that you had to hit those first cars with 2 wheels?
Well, it's just because if say a truck comes down the track, you can run faster with 2 wheels off of one side of the cars. And if there was a guy gutsy enough to run down there wide open, and the ramp wasn't a violent ramp, you wouldn't get any air, and you could stay down on the ground. You could actually win the race by missing the cars or staying off the ramp. And besides, the guys would push the issue probably, and they'd have swerved and went around the cars, you know. So somebody had to put a guideline down for us.
And it ended up working because obviously I was part of it. Now let's talk about the fact that Richard and Army were really drilling on. Was that something conscious about clearing those cars that you and Gary and some of the others had in mind? Was that a goal you wanted to accomplish there?
Yeah, it was. It always was. Always, you know, even if I didn't win, if I knew it was going to be a close race, and say like if you lost a race, it's better to lose a race and be exciting losing it, like, you know, almost crashing or whatever, you know. So, and the big thing then was clearing 10 cars, and that was a goal, and you know, it's just pit talk. You know, you come back and say, man, that was an awesome run, that was fast. You know, you blew across all the cars, so it was pretty cool.
And that was a day when we're talking about it, your reputation, and it continues, the Gravedigger, you know, phenomenon, and the legend continues to build, but those were real formative days of building it. Yes, you had to be spectacular, but the success was also important too, and when people saw you do things like that, again, like you and I have talked so many times, whether it's been on a camera or off, that sent him to the t-shirt stand, and in those days, that was a lot of where the Gravedigger was being funded from, was those t-shirts.
You're not kidding, you know, because back in the day, that old steel truck, and I still have that same very truck right now. It sits in front of my shop on a monument mound out in front of Digger's Dungeon, and I'm proud of it. You know, it's like, and I'm not really, I ride by it and see it every day, but like times like this, you know, here we are in the studio talking about, you know, old times and watching videos. It's really cool to still have that piece too.
All right, let's talk about where we're going here. Semifinal round after all this build up and a little bit of sniping there, because again, you and we're going to tell it like it is. We're going to tell it like it is here in Monster Truck Classics. You and Everett Jasmer and Rod Litzow, there was a lot of mutual respect, but I didn't see a whole lot of close friendship. It's not like you guys were old drinking buddies or anything. And now you guys were going to lock horns in the semifinals.
Right. Well, see, I always looked at Everett Jasmer like he felt like he was always a scotch ahead of me anyway. He had Chevrolet behind him. He had nice equipment, sweet running motors, brand new Terra tires. You know, always had nice equipment. And like I said, Chevrolet was backing him. I was the old country boy putting junk together, coming out to the track. And they honestly didn't want to take a whipping from low finances is what it was. You know, if you're flying that Chevy flag on, and I always wanted a Chevy sponsorship. Never got it. My biggest sponsorship was the fans. Buying t-shirts, hats, and posters. That's where I got my nuts and bolts and my motors, you know, and they got theirs from Chevy, so I always kind of had a little chip on my shoulder about that.
So y'all had a rivalry, but before we go further, you also had a lot of respect. I know you respected what they could do, especially with a motor.
Oh, yeah, and they did, man. I mean, USA 1, they romped and stomped from 1989 right on up into the 90s. Then it was just poof, they faded away.
The Gravedigger certainly didn't fade away, and this was one that people were really looking forward to. Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger taking on the defending national champion Rod Litzow and USA 1 in the semifinals at Kalamazoo, Michigan, here on Monster Truck Classics.
It is time for the semifinals, but better than that, I might say it's time for Civil War, Army. It is the North, USA 1, the defending national champion with Rod Litzow against South, Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger. Neither of these guys really like each other of late. As a matter of fact, there could be a little jealousy on behalf of them. Gravedigger, the popular truck, USA 1, got a lot of money behind him, and here we are, they're fighting it out.
Richard, a while ago when USA 1 ran, we used the bear story. What we got here is opening the door and 2 bears are in the room. They're just going to fight it out amongst themselves. It is going to be close. I guarantee you. Look at this. They're coming along. Richard, final jump side by side. Almost went over the Gravedigger. They're trying to shut the USA 1 down. He's going way out the end of the track, and I have no idea who won that race.
Well, that makes 2 of us, and Digger has got some problems. Gravedigger has got some serious problems at the end of the track. There you see the finish line tape, and it is Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger getting the win just barely over Rod Litzow and USA 1. However, Big time problems on the digger machine down there, as I can definitely see a right front tire that is totally flat. We don't know what other problems might be underneath it, but the big news, Dennis Anderson got his hands around USA 1 and strangled him for a win.
Dennis Anderson, when this thing started tonight, you told us you were going after USA 1. You lined up next to him, and you got him. What's going through your mind right now?
Well, I was glad I could pull it off. I pulled to the line. I didn't have second gear, so I had to bump it from low to third and just stay after it, you know, and I was going to nail him to the wall, and that's what I did. Done a little bit of damage to the truck, but who cares? I beat him.
What goes through your mind at a time like that? That's almost scary.
Well, it is. It's blood and guts out here, you know. We're for real. You know, we're here to win the points champion. We got big purse to win, and we got reputations to live up to, and we're going to live up to them.
And you're going to the final. We'll see you there.
All right, thanks.
Rod Litzow, 7/100ths of a second. So little, but yet so far.
Yeah, I don't know. I ain't the way I planned it out here. I was pushing it to the limit there. I don't know. I thought it was a lot closer than that. I don't know. Maybe I have to review the tape again. I don't think he got me because I was looking out the side of my... I was looking out the side. I could see him behind me, so I don't know if he got me there.
Well, you got some doubt as to whether or not he did beat you?
Yeah, I'd like to see the tape on it.
Rod, I'm sorry, partner. I may like you, but you lost the race. Gravedigger wins it by a tire thread. He's in the finals. Who's he going to face? Either David Morrison, Equalizer, or Dave Wysorek and Nightlife.
Wysorek's been working his way up all night long. One difference, though. Wysorek is now moved into the right lane. Morris saw how quick he was running. He had lane choice, so he puts Wysorek in a lane he's not familiar with, and it's paid dividends. You know, in the Anderson interview a moment ago, he referred to blood and guts out here. That's what it's getting down to. Now we've got two of them.
And those two are the Gravedigger and the Equalizer. They'll be in the championship in just a moment. But first, it is time for the Renegades TNT Question of the Week. And this question of the week comes from 9-year-old Paul Geroltowski of Gibsonia, Pennsylvania. And Paul wants to know how much horsepower the monster trucks have and how they determine it. With me is Jesse Berge. Jesse is the owner and driver of the Playing for Keeps machine. And Jesse, what about it?
Well, Paul, the horsepower on the monster trucks varies between probably 750 and a little over 1,200 horsepower. Most of it is estimated. I don't think anybody really has an accurate figure on what we make. It's a lot of it determined by the weight of the truck. Heavier truck needs a little more horsepower. Some of the lighter trucks can get by with a little bit less.
And what about your truck, Playing for Keeps?
My motor makes right at 800 horsepower.
All right, so as you can see, Paul, the difference really depends upon the driver and the truck. A major development here tonight, Army. We just got word Dennis Anderson is not going to be able to race in the finals. The damage in that race against USA 1 was too much to repair. So Rod Litzow and USA 1 comes back against David Morrison, the Equalizer, for the big piece of cake.
Litzow comes back not only for the final run, he's coming back with blood in his eyes. He wants to win in the worst way. Whatever it takes for USA 1 to win, that's what he's going to do. He's going to try to put the rookie on the trailer. Final jump, who's it going to be? Litzow. And he's in trouble down here again, Richard.
Rod Litzow is on his side. I can see him scurrying out of the truck. Drivers running down, emergency crew running down. Rod Litzow got the win. The helmet comes off. He's okay. And Army, I didn't see him with any trouble.
No, when he's straight at this point in time on a replay, he must have an actual brake, because when he tagged the brakes, that's when it went over. Slow roll. Man, that was an expensive roll.
Well, I told you earlier, the guys on the circuit call him Flipper. That is why Rod Litzow puts it on its side. That's his crew chief, Steve Wilkie, checking to make sure he's okay. But the big news is Rod Litzow gets the win here in Kalamazoo.
A costly win, Richard, but believe me, the True Value USA 1 team, they will be back.
So Rod Litzow, despite flipping over for the 6th time in less than a year, gets the win tonight, and he inches even closer to the lead in the national point standings. He is currently sitting in 3rd place. For Army Armstrong, I'm Richard Leake. We'll see you again on the tracks across America.
Well, there you have it, and that just kind of shows you how monster truck racing has gotten to where it is today. When we had events like that were the grassroots, were the beginning, the evolution of the sport. Dennis Anderson, when we look at it, and we've got a few areas to cover as we wrap it up, and I want to back up before the finals first. That semifinal win, to take us back to the day and your attitude I'm thinking, my recollection, my remembrances of you at that time, even though you couldn't make it to the finals, even though you didn't win that event, that was a satisfying night for you because you took out USA 1 in the semifinals.
Oh, it was. You know, back in the day, USA 1, he was the man. You know, that was the fastest truck, the best equipment on the track at the time. And if we beat him, I didn't give a darn if the truck didn't move the rest of the night. That's all I wanted to do. And it's just, and it was because of Rod. You know, I liked Rod off track, but he wanted me just as bad as I wanted him, because I remember when he first started, he was poking down the track, and I could wear him out with a naturally aspirated motor with single carburetor on. He had a blower motor when he first started. I've got old footage of myself to prove that. But anyhow, it was that was a great night for us.
But by the time we're seeing this, Rod had become the man. He wasn't poking down any tracks at this point in the game.
That's exactly right. They were romping and stomping.
Now, when you guys in that little controversy, he looked at videotape. He wasn't convinced you beat him, but we could have that argument all night long. The argument stopped when you broke the drive shaft and they got a chance to come back in the finals. And boy, did they take advantage of it. Now, I know, and I'm not trying to speak for Rod or any of that team, they wanted to beat you bad, but the chance to get a piece of Equalizer, who at that point was kind of passing them up as the new hotshot. Equalizer was the points leader. That was a big race.
Right, it was. That old Equalizer truck, man, when it first hit the circuit, I remember looking at it going, I don't know about all this. Gary Cook, he done his homework. He had that truck. He watched us go, and he was probably just scratching his head watching us. Then he was probably laughing at us. But that old guy, when he brought some technology to the track that maybe a lot of the other guys didn't pay attention to it, but I did. That truck scooted down the track. I call it Scooter, was a nickname that we called it in the pit, you know, because that thing would scoot and stay low to the ground. That was a good old piece.
He figured out that part. He figured out the weight part, and obviously Equalizer did very well in those days and as time went on, and still had some very successful years as time would go on in monster truck racing. Now, I do want to kind of go over it again. Obviously a big win for USA 1 at that point, but when you look at the overall magnitude of the event, first area I want to get into is the track itself, because now we run more turning courses. They're actually longer when you stretch them out than this, but they're not longer in the straightaways. Can you imagine what the trucks that you drive today would do on a course that was just as flat out as that one was?
It'd be awesome. I can tell you that right now. Those
It'd
tracks,
be scary.
Well, look, the Army's term, the no man land, is so long and so big in those courses. And we have maybe one event in West Lebanon that's close to that. But they still tighten that event up too, because these trucks are so fast and so light now that I wish they would turn us loose in some of those places. We probably have some trouble getting them stopped, because as you can see, some of them flipped over and almost hit the guardrail. Dude, we'd launch out there. You're talking 10 cars, I guarantee we'd jump 15 cars.
It is amazing where the technology has come, and it just keeps getting better. Now let's talk about a couple of other things. When I look down this field, and again, there was 14, 15, 16 trucks at most of these events. When you're talking about making the finals, a lot of these times, you're racing at midnight back in those days.
Oh, there's no joke. I mean, when you, back in the day, you earned your keep. If you made it to the finals, you earned every dime that you got. Because look at the trucks you had to whittle down through. Look at that long track. It wasn't just like going out there and just going over a little burp over one car or one pile. You know, you had multiple piles and long tracks. So it was tough running on those trucks, and you beat them up hard. And as you can see, our suspension didn't give as much as we thought it did.
Exactly.
We thought we had good suspension back then until now.
You know, some of the fans who have come to the sport in the last few years and who have become big Gravedigger fans, I'll see them at a pit party or we'll see them getting near the truck, and they'll look at the tombstones, and some of the names don't ring a bell for them. I've seen, you know, some of the names like Jersey Outlaw and USA 1 on your truck for years, and people may wonder where they came from. They're seeing it today, but how did all that start where you put these old school names on the side there?
Well, what's cool about this is we've got Army Armstrong here. He's the man. He's the man that actually started that. We were in Nashville Motor Speedway, and I had the paint job done on the truck. Well, the tombstones were blank. And what I'd done is I went in and put some sponsors on a couple of tombstones. And it was just people that give me nuts and bolts and stuff like that. And I think I had my name on a tombstone, you know, with some kind of little saying on it or whatever. And Army came up, and he's like, he always used the term of the old gunslingers, the gunfighters.
Sure he did.
And, you know, put another notch in your belt type deal. So he says, you ought to paint these guys, as you beat them, paint them on the side of your truck. So we actually done a little segment. I took a model car brush with some watercolors just in case, and I wasn't a painter, but we'd done this little fake interview thing, and I got up there and was painting the names in the tombstone. Well, it was cool, and people loved it from that day right there, and they were like, that's awesome. So I actually had a professional painter paint them in the tombstone.
But you've kept some of the older names on the tombstones as time has gone on.
Right, and I was kind of worried about it when I first put it on. Like, you know, I put the Bigfoot on the tombstone. Like, oh, Bob might get me in a headlock, you know. And but hey, they were proud. They were proud to be on there. And then it was even as time went on, some of the other guys that I'd beat 3 or 4 or 5 times over, they're going, "Well, you don't think we're good enough to get put up on the tombstone?" They wanted to be on the tombstone. It was a cool deal.
What a great story.
And I can thank Army for that.
Fans I've talked to thanked you for an awful lot of great performances, and I'm glad we could get to them today on Monster Truck Classics. For Dennis Anderson, Richard Leake, and Army Armstrong, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Monster Truck Classics.